Test, test. Welcome to the Chasing Greatness podcast, proudly sponsored by
Proud Source Water, straight from the Rocky Mountains.
Sponsored by Ziems Ford, actually.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah,
I like that.
There's a real sponsor.
That sounds better.
Give me a sticker for right here.
Okay. Done.
Mike Ziems of Ziems Ford, a.k.a. Lil Rude.
Little Rude, yeah.
A.k.a.
In the house.
The Car Father, a.k.a. Trying to think the other personas that I've had. There's been a handful of them, but I'm glad that you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
We're going to talk to Mike Ziems today.
Thanks for
Not
having
Lil
me.
Rude.
Well,
there's only one watch on.
I'm drinking whiskey, so he might come out.
So we'll see. Yeah, see how many whiskeys we have. But no, I'm super excited that you're here. I joke that you're my first ever client and also the only one that never signed. So, you get to have that.
Yeah, we're on a day-by-day contract.
I'm still trying to earn the business. I'm still trying to earn the signature one of these days.
I don't know. I'm gonna kind of hold that one close to the chest. We'll
Purposefully not signing. I see how it is. Yeah. No, I'm super excited. So, one of the things I want to talk about for sure is, peeling back learning a little bit of the mindset behind the crazy that is Mike Ziems. And who in the world would want to ride a bike 100 miles while also running a business and raising a family and, doing all of the things that you do. But before we dive in on that, I actually want to hear, how did you start biking? Like, what was have you been mountain biking for years, for a really long time? What got you started on mountain biking?
So I started, when I grew up, I lived in this house, and behind the house were the hills. So I had this old Murray. It was a fully rigid mountain. I guess you could call it a mountain bike. And I loved to just go explore the wilderness. So I spent my childhood behind my house, riding my bike up and down the hills, and fell in love with it that way. Got a little bit more serious maybe in my mid-teens. I actually got my first proper mountain bike. And then me and my buddy, it was kind of the thing that linked us together. So we've been doing it ever since. So
still? With the same buddy?
He actually does the Leadville with me. So
awesome. And then did you stick with it the whole time? Gaps? I mean, has it always been
late teens, early 20s, we decided to do the 24 hours of Moab as a duo team. So that's kind of crazy. That's just as crazy as Leadville. We did that for 2 or 3 years as a duo team. And then...
When you say duo team, do you mean that you're taking turns for the 24 hours or you're doing it together?
Right. So there's laps. So there's 15-mile laps. So for 24 hours, I'll ride 1 lap or 2 laps in a row, and then he'll switch and ride. So we alternate the laps, and then we do as many as we can in 24 hours.
How cool.
The last year we did it, there was a big rainstorm and flash flooding, so they actually paused the race, and I think they started it back up in the morning. But it was at night, so I was the last person at night to come off the course. The trail was flooded up to your knees with water. Really scary kind of situation. The ambulances were going up, picking up people that had wrecked, and
actually dangerous.
Yeah, no, it got scary.
So you were the last person off. We were just talking about DFL or last ass over the pass or whatever.
Yeah.
Were you actually last, or were you just the last person to get pulled?
Well, for the break that they had that year, so they took a break. They were thinking about canceling it, but I think they just paused it and if I don't remember, but they may have canceled the race. But it was pretty scary.
It's crazy. How do you go from, I don't know, I'll call it casually exploring the wilderness, as you called it, to these crazy, whether it's a 24-hour event or a 100-mile race? I would imagine there was some level of progression in there, or did you, were you doing other competition or race type events?
No. The 24 hours was like really the only race I did. Up until my 30s, I think. Then I entered like the Road Apple Rally. It's a local race in Farmington. But we had no idea what we were doing. We're like, let's pick the hardest thing we can think of and let's try to do it.
And just going for it. Curious why? Like what was the driving factor between like the first sign up for the 24 hours of Moab? Fun, challenge, weekend away with a buddy? What was the...
Kind of all the above. I think we were unrealistically optimistic about our abilities. And
ignorance is bliss.
Yep. And we got a pretty rude awakening the first year on how hard it would actually be to keep riding that same lap for 24 hours. The night laps were the most interesting. The mice would come out and run across the road, and as racers would go by, they'd run over the mice. So as the night went on, the mice would pile up on the road. And I remember, so you have a light on your bike, on your handlebar, and then you have a light on your helmet, and it's in Moab. So pretty rough terrain, a lot of stair steps and sandstone type terrain, and I wrecked at night. And going down this little ledge and went over the handlebars, broke my light off of my handlebars, and I had to find some baling wire on a barbed wire fence, and I wired my light back, finished the lap, and then my buddy Matt did the second lap, or the lap after that. And when I went back out again the second time at night, I had fixed that light with a new clip, same exact place. I do the same exact thing.
You fell again?
I fell again. And as I was going over the handlebars, I was looking down at the dirt, and I saw the piece that had broken off the first time down there on the ground.
So literally the exact spot.
Yeah. So that was kind of surreal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that was, help me with the timeline on that. Those Moab runs were how long ago?
Those were, so they don't do that race anymore. That was probably mid-2000s, I'd say.
Awesome. You're making me feel nervous for my mountain biking debut next Monday.
Oh, you'll be fine. You're with trained professionals.
I was talking to Quinn. I'm like, is it cheating to go with the e-bike? Because I can kind of justify it because we have camera gear, but I also feel like one of the benefits of the whole Adventures with Ziems thing is that I get to experience some cool stuff too. So we'll see what I decide on Monday, but I'm thinking about just having them give me a regular bike and see if I can at least survive out there. But I'll see what your advice is on it.
I think if you can run 60 plus miles, I think you'll be fine on a bike.
We'll see. That's actually kind of one of the things I'm interested to pick your brain on, some of the differences on it. So when I did my first ultra, I guess it's been like 3 weeks is all now. I was thinking about the difference between what I'll call an ultra length mountain bike ride or bike ride and an ultra running event. And there's got to be some pretty significant differences in terms of fatigue. So like running on one hand, I've never mountain biked really. Like I've ridden a bike as much as the next guy, but I've never really mountain biked. Running, you have the impact, but you also can kind of like change your steps a little. You can it's not necessarily recommended, but you can kind of change your cadence. So you're working different muscles and you can kind of like work through it. Biking, I feel like you don't have the impact, but you only have the one motion. So I just feel like it would be interesting if you could ever talk to somebody that's like actually done an ultra run and an ultra ride. Because I feel like the muscle fatigue in biking has got to be, in running, it was the impact and then the ligaments were really what ended up pulling me out was my Achilles tendon. Where biking though, I feel like you end up with, it's such a different level of muscle fatigue without the impact, but it's all speculative. I don't know.
I haven't met somebody that's done both, but I've listened to some podcasts with some people that have done both. And I think the thing that sets the biking apart is the contact points. So the run, you have your feet are your two main contact points. on the bike you have your hands, you've got your butt,
Right.
and then you've got your feet, and you're bent over. So I think that's what makes the bike. I'm not going to say that the bike's harder than the run, but the people that I've heard from that have done both, they say that the pain from all of those contact points makes the bike harder.
Because there's three. It's almost like there's three opportunities for
Yeah.
huge issues.
Well, four. Well, five. You got your feet, your hands,
Right.
and your
Both feet,
butt.
both hands, and your butt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're running. Of course, I will say when I've never had this happen, but I ran far enough that my back started hurting.
Oh wow.
Which is that's a first. I've never had back fatigue from running. So it shows you how little. I probably 3 weeks ago looked a lot like Mike Ziems at the first Moab, 24 hours of Moab, because I had no clue what I was doing. And I had trekking poles, which I never trained with. I've never ran with. I'm clueless with them. But my back was hurting so bad, I started using my trekking poles at the end. I learned quickly how little I knew, but I also learned that how possible it is. So now I'm fully hooked. You've even got me looking at the Leadville 100, and
I think you should do it. Let's sign up.
I've
got the website pulled up right here. So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. No, but have you seen there's a camp that I'm looking at. They do it's like the Leadville, and you can if you pay for the camp and registry, you also get into the race. And it's like a 3 or 4 day, crash course training thing, and you run different segments of it. I feel like I've got to do something like that first, but who knows?
I think that would pay dividends if you want to do the race. And I think that camp, gets you a guaranteed entry into the race.
It does.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would do that. I kind of wish I did that my first year because you do learn so much. The first year we did it, we had no idea, just like the Moab thing. We had no idea what we were doing. We're like, oh, that's, how Leadville came to be for us. I saw this video of Lance Armstrong, and this was after he'd actually raced in Leadville, but this was he raced the La Ruta de Conquistadores. That's a race in Costa Rica, and it goes from the Pacific coast to the Caribbean side. It goes all the way across at the same route that the conquistadors invaded Costa Rica, or however they came through.
That's a road race?
It's a mountain bike race.
It is.
But
okay.
They say that's probably the hardest mountain bike race in the world. It's a 3-day stage race. So I saw him do that, and that's really I was like, well, that looks pretty hard. Let's, I set my sights on that. And then after talking to my buddy, we're like, okay, well, there's Leadville. So the Conquistador race is kind of like doing maybe 2 or 3 Leadvilles.
Right.
They're doing a Leadville every day for 3 days. So we're like, okay, well, let's see if we can do Leadville. Haven't gotten to La Ruta yet, but we've been to Leadville 3 times together.
Yeah.
So
I want to hear about the first one, especially you talk about learning a lot and, kind of just going for it. I'm interested to because especially now, because I've got a little more perspective on things like aid station and nutrition and, fuel and things like that. I want to hear, in fact, before we do that, I also want to hear about remind me your buddy's name. Matt. So you and Matt see this race with Lance Armstrong, start researching Leadville, or how did you, what was the...
I think he might have brought up Leadville because I think we both knew how hard the La Ruta is.
And you're looking for your version of that?
Well, I still want to do that. I don't know about him, but it was kind of a test to see if it was possible to do La Ruta.
Got it. So you were feeling like there's even a more massive goal out there.
Right.
But this is
Leadville is like a step to an even bigger goal eventually.
Is that a plan eventually?
It might be. There's also...
You're on the record.
There's also... it's not really a race. It's more of some people race it, but it goes from Canada to Mexico on the Continental Divide.
Wow.
It's called the Tour Divide, and that it's like a bike packing event. I believe it's 2,700 miles So that's like doing a Leadville every day for
A month.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I'm not signing up for that yet, but
but it's there.
that's in the sights.
It's on the horizon.
Yeah.
That's what's wild is like, for anybody else, the Leadville 100 seems astronomically big. It's always crazy to have conversations like this, and there's like the next thing that's even bigger.
100 miles seems a long way until you ride 100 miles, and then you're like, oh, well, what's
Maybe
next?
I could go further.
Maybe I can go 1,000.
Yeah, it's wild. But tell me about the first one, because the first one, I believe we didn't finish, correct?
Yeah, so the first one didn't finish. So there's aid stations and cutoff time, so I didn't make the cutoff time.
So you didn't tap out. You were forced.
I'm glad I was pulled, but I probably wouldn't have quit. But they did pull me from the race. I think mile 64. So I'd made it all the way up. It's an out and back course. Made it all the way up to Columbine, which is the highest point of the race, and back down to a section called Twin Lakes, and I got pulled there because I missed my cutoff time by 3 minutes.
And this was in 2020?
Would have been 21.
2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walk me through the process of deciding to try Leadville for the first time, and then, actually, did you have a formal training plan? Did you have a coach? Were you guys experimenting with nutrition and fuel and stuff like that?
The first year, no coach. I thought that I could ride an hour a day for 4 or 5 times a week, and that would be sufficient. Didn't do any hill climbing, and I had no idea that there were hills or mountains that big. Because in Farmington, we have hills.
Hills.
We don't have mountains. We have hills. So probably the longest climb that I did in Farmington was probably 500 feet of elevation gain.
And you're staring down the pipe of...
So over the course of the Leadville 100, it's over 12,000 feet of climbing.
Yeah. So yesterday, actually, I had on the podcast Cameron Winters. I don't know if you know him or not, but he's an ultra runner. He owns Durango Fitness Club.
Okay.
Really great guy. And I was joking with him about how ill-prepared I was for my first run. And we were talking about elevation gain. And he tries to get the elevation of the race per week.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the new strategy for me too. At least when I'm in at least probably three or 4 months up to the race, or at least 3 months. That's a good goal to have.
Yeah. So anyway, though, 2021, 500 feet maybe sometimes in training, informal training at best.
Informal training, and probably my goal was to ride 4 or 5 times a week, but I probably really only rode on average probably 3 times a week.
Right.
So very ill-prepared.
Run a business and live life. And
Yep. Had no idea about nutrition. Our strategy was to carry all of our food with us and not utilize any of the aid stations.
Ooh, interesting choice.
And we didn't train using the aid station food, so you can find out beforehand what food is going to be at the aid stations. So you can train your stomach to be used to that kind of food. So if they're using a certain brand of gel, or if they have bananas or whatever electrolyte mix they have, you can train with that. So if you want to rely on the aid station, that's a good strategy because you're used to that if you don't want to carry all of your own food. But
so you didn't have a crew? You guys just showed up?
No, we did have a crew. So they waited for us at the Twin Lakes aid station. So we did have a crew. So we met with them once.
Right.
But there's 4 aid stations that you can utilize throughout the course, and you can hit them up twice if you want to.
Yeah, because you could have a total of 8 aid stations, right? And a lot of people, I think, have crew kind of leapfrog all the way there.
Yeah, that kind of becomes a little difficult with logistics. If your crew, at least for Leadville, if you don't want them at the starting line, which a lot of people's crew are their family, so a lot of the family likes to watch the starting line.
Sure.
You could probably get to one aid station early and then get to maybe the pipeline on the inbound
skip
section.
One.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, though, so the plan is crew is going to be at the turnaround point.
Yep.
50 miles in.
More or less. They're going to be at mile 42 mile 42, and you turn around at mile 52 and a half or so. They call it the Leadville 100, but it's really the Leadville 105.
And those 5 matter.
They give you the 5 for free.
That's the tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're essentially then you've got backpacks on with all your food, like camelbacks?
So the first year we tried to use bottles. So you have a bike jersey has pockets in the back. You can put your gels and your food. And then we were doing bottle switches. And then at the aid stations, we were filling up with
whatever they
electrolyte
had.
mix, which neither of us had trained with.
How'd your stomach do?
My stomach was okay. I didn't eat enough. The stomach was fine. I just didn't fuel properly. I started cramping about mile 20 and kind of had cramps on and off until they pulled me from the race.
Brutal. And you were just powering through the cramps?
Yeah. Well, that year I've kind of learned, because I think I'm more prone to cramping than some people, but the first year I'd get off my bike and just kind of stretch the legs out and then hop back on. And I've learned to just keep pedaling, and the cramps actually go away eventually.
Really? Like you've gotten to the point you can pedal through cramps?
Mm-hmm. You got to dial the power back. But yeah, I just pedal right through the cramps now.
Wow.
Because this last year was probably the year that I had the least amount of cramping, but I tend to always cramp. I don't know if it's the elevation, but it just doesn't matter how many electrolytes I take in or carbohydrates. I just cramp.
Do you cramp in training?
Rarely.
Weird. So maybe there's got to be some variable with.
Well, there's not a part of that race that's under 9,300 feet.
And
so
Farmington's at like 5,000?
55.
Yeah.
Durango's at 75. The highest, so I do a lot of training in Durango now, and the highest point you can practically get to is about 11,000 feet. Like if you're wanting to ride on dirt, you can get up to about 11.
Yeah. I wonder if that's it. If it's elevation and
Could be.
Oxygen, or you push harder than you realize on race day or something.
Yeah, it could be just the race day adrenaline and the competition and all that.
Yeah. So tell me about, how close were you on the cutoff year one? Because you'd mentioned that you don't think you would have pulled, which I think is awesome, but that you didn't get to the aid station in time. Was it close? Like, did you know it was going to happen, or?
I had really no information on the cutoff times. I didn't pay attention to that.
You're just riding.
First year, other than the people at the aid station, they're like, "Oh, you got to go," because I was at the top of the mountain. They're like, "Oh, you got to go. You can make it." So I was like, "Okay." So I got some food up there and then rode down the mountain. I was 3 minutes away from making the cutoff time.
3 minutes of a 15-hour race. 3 minutes is nothing.
Yeah, so you have to officially finish, you have to finish it in under 12 hours.
Okay, 12 hours is the cutoff for biking.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's so fast.
Yeah, the pros, and there's some pros from Durango that race it, and they're all sub 7-hour guys.
Unreal. Yeah, though I think the elite runners are more at like 18 hours
for the Leadville.
Yeah,
yeah,
and those are the pros.
Yeah,
a guy like me would probably take 30 hours.
I think I'd be running for a week if I tried to do that. Run.
That's why. So the 100-miler I signed up for, it's the Buffalo Run 100. It's the end of March, and a part of the reason why I signed up for it is it has a 37-hour cutoff time.
Not a 24.
I can walk that if I have to.
Yeah.
There's enough time for some things to go wrong and still have success a possibility.
Yeah. And I think the Leadville's a 36-hour too, I think.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah, and this has, a tenth of the elevation gain that Leadville has. So there's, some decisions there. But were there factors other than like the physical component with a race like that, elevation and training, any issues with, or even just like things that people don't think about with, I don't know, navigation or the riding at night, or just those other things that can make a race of that distance have these other variables?
The biggest variable for me is that I'm a big guy. So I'm 6'4", 245 pounds. So I'm not a biker. I'm not a bicyclist.
You don't identify as a biker?
I do, but people look at me weird when I say I ride my bike.
It's interesting.
But that's the biggest hurdle for me. Some of the unknowns, so the race starts out cold. It starts out about 40 degrees, and it gets up to about 75 during the day. And you don't realize, even when it's cold, that you should be drinking, because at that elevation you get dehydrated faster.
Yeah.
So you may not feel like drinking in the morning, but you need to stay hydrated. And you also need to be prepared for 40-degree temperatures, but 75 at 10,000 feet feels a lot warmer than it does at 5,500 feet.
And 40 feels a lot colder.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to kind of be ready for all the extremes of weather too.
Yeah, temperature and a storm could roll in an instant. If you're up at the top of the mountain, they've seen snow and hail and wind, rain.
And you're pretty on your own. It's not like there's something goes wrong at the top, closest aids.
There's an aid station at the top. So they don't have any mechanical support at the top. But
there's another variable difference that's interesting to think about with biking versus running.
Yeah.
Not much can go wrong mechanically if you're running.
Right.
But biking, there's all these other variables with chains and tires and pedals and
right.
So are you carrying a little mechanical pack too, like some fix-a-flat and a wrench, or?
I have a saddle bag, and it has all kind of your bare essentials for fixing a bike, as much as you can do on the trail.
At least to patch a flat and get a chain back on, something like that.
And you kind of bringing up the bike thing, the mechanical thing on the other side is Leadville has a lot of steep climbs, and for the average Joe are unrideable. So you're not only are you can have mechanical issues, but when you're not riding your bike, you're walking, but you're also pushing your bike.
Right, and you're in not ideal shoes.
You're in stiff biking shoes, walking up a hill.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. So, are you in the category of? Do you ride all of it, or do you walk for a part of it?
No, I walk. There's a good portion. There's two well-known climbs, and there's the Columbine climb, which is the first one, and it's the halfway point. And it starts at 9,300 feet, and it goes all the way up to, I think, 12,300 or 12,400. So it's over 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
And towards the end, they call it the Goat Trail. It's this rocky, steep section. And pretty much everybody that's not a pro walks that part. And you're probably walking about a mile or a mile and a half to get up to the top.
Pushing a bike on a steep hill.
Pushing a bike.
In stiff shoes, and you probably never trained pushing your bike.
I've heard of people doing that, but it never sounded appealing to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Today's the day.
Okay, on the day that it happens, I'm going to do it. I'll push it.
Push up the hill when you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which actually, if you're doing the the elevation training method, maybe it would happen organically.
Yeah.
Along the way.
Yeah.
So we time out year one. How are we feeling? Are we frustrated? Are we in pain? Are we relieved?
I was relieved that I got pulled, because it would have been a much harder day. So Matt, my buddy, the first year, he rode the course, made that cutoff time, and he missed, I think maybe it was the second or the second to last cutoff time, missed it by a couple minutes. They didn't pull him. He and this other rider, they continued to ride the race, and they finished it, I think, in 13 hours. But
when you finish in 13 hours, do you get a buckle?
You don't get a buckle. No, you have to finish in under 12. But
they let him.
They let him. So he finished the course, just not in the allotted time. But the way that he looked when he got back, I was like, I'm so glad I got pulled because he wasn't looking too good when he came back.
Yeah, talking to Cameron yesterday, they last weekend ran a 100-miler, him and some buddies. And he said when they finished, both of his buddies were like, hate to disappoint you, man, but we are never doing that ever again, ever. And then, of course, 6 days later, they've already signed up for the next one. And that's kind of what I'm curious about, too. So, year one obviously didn't go great, but it sounds like also wasn't, devastatingly bad. There's some learning curves, but all things considered, a pretty, I don't know, it could have been worse also type day. But what I'm curious about, because then I know that there's been, a few years after that we're going to talk about, but what made you, I'm kind of curious just the mindset or the decision process and even the timeline on it too, from year one not going great to then you saying, I'm going to do that again.
So year one happened. I kind of had the mindset of I have unfinished business in Leadville. So
did you feel like you failed?
No, but I knew I wanted to finish the race.
You could tell it was doable though.
Yeah, I knew I could do it. Yeah, after that point. And I wanted one of these stupid buckles. I don't know why we do this for a stupid belt buckle.
I'm telling you, I'm now obsessed with buckles.
Yeah.
So
so in September, I did a 100-mile race in Flagstaff that September after not finishing Leadville. And that was actually the first time I ever rode 100 miles, was finishing that race. Did
they give out buckles at that one?
They did. I have a little buckle from that, but it's not as cool as the Leadville buckle, but I do have a little buckle from that one.
When I finished I ran 105 kilometers, not miles, 65 miles. And I got, you'll get a kick out of it, but it's the doinkiest metal that you can imagine. It's a carved off bottom of a little tree. It's a little wood metal, and they clearly just burned in the 24 hours of Palmer Lake emblem on it. And those are for ultra finishers. 100 milers get the buckle. But it's funny because it's just like this little, it almost looks like a Christmas tree ornament maybe. And it is on the most pathetic little ribbon you could imagine. I mean, I think it's genuinely homemade. It means the freaking world to me. So those little buckles, they're important too.
Yeah. So that was the first 100 miles I rode, and then so the day we didn't finish Leadville, my buddy signs up for this other race in Austin.
Literally day of?
Yeah, the night of. He's like, all right, because he kind of got the unfinished business bug too.
Yeah.
So we signed up for that race in that November, and it was a 60-mile race. So I did a 100-mile race and then a 60-mile race. So after September of that year, I hired a coach. So
you got a little serious.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I need some help here because Mike's training plan isn't cutting the mustard. So we need some professionals to kind of step in here. And I've been with the same coach ever since. Thought about trying to go back and doing it myself, but I like having that accountability.
Yeah,
having somebody to hold you accountable.
Do you feel like you're still learning from the coach, or it's more really accountability and the plan side of it, or are you actually getting new information?
Yeah, I do learn from him, but I think the biggest benefit is having that accountability and then having somebody pick out workouts that might stretch you a little bit, because I would probably pick out workouts that, are the same old ones I'll just go ride my bike.
Right.
But we're doing interval training and different types of workouts that focus on different zones and all that stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. And then, so we hire a coach. We've decided we're doing Leadville again. And walk me through now the new, the preparation differences and kind of the approach to year. And was it back-to-back years? It was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and for those who don't know, Leadville, to get in, you have to go through the lottery. Unless you've successfully finished it, I think 7 or 8 times. And then there's people that go for their 1,000-mile buckle and their 2,000-mile buckle. But If you haven't finished it, then it's a lot harder to get into the lottery. So the second year to get in, we went through the Lifetime Foundation and did a charity spot. So
Because you didn't want to risk it.
we had to finish. So we're like, okay, well, we didn't get in the lottery, so we did try to get in through the lottery,
And that was unsuccessful.
didn't get in. So then you do get a guaranteed spot if you do the charity spot. So that's how we got in the second year. But our strategy had changed. Instead of doing bottles, we wore hydration packs, and we switched those. We had our crew at the same spot, but we switched our hydration packs. Really, leading up to it, focused on nutrition, and then I focused on following my training plan set by my coach.
Yeah. And how did the race go?
Well, I finished under 12 hours. I think I finished 11 hours and 55 minutes, I think I finished that year.
It's crazy. And, like I said earlier, for anybody listening who doesn't wrap their head around the significance of how tight that time is, you're looking at a 12-hour window, and you finished in with 5 minutes to spare.
So I have a bike computer, and it connects to my phone. And my wife was sending me text messages, because she knew how close it was too. She's like, "Don't stop, go,
Like,
don't
you
stop."
gotta
So I could
push.
read the text messages. 10 minutes into finishing the race, she was sending me all these text messages saying, "You got it, go."
Only
go,
10 minutes before?
Well, she was. She knew how tight it was because and then she can also track me, so she knew more or less where I was. So she's like, "Okay, well, he's 5 miles away from the finish line, so he's close."
Yeah. And walk me through where you're at physically and mentally at that point. I don't know when the aid station at 80 or whatever.
So
but
there's probably the hardest climb is the power line climb. And it is, I can tell you here, it is, I think, 4 miles, and it goes from basically 9,600 feet to back to 11,1
yeah,
in 4 miles. And it's steep. It's
1,000 feet per mile almost.
it's parts are 20% grades, and most people walk their bike up that. So it was kind of funny. So my buddy had passed me earlier during the race, and then I caught up to him on the first climb, and then somehow he passed me again, and then I caught up to him again on that power line climb.
You guys are kind of leapfrogging.
Yeah, we were leapfrogging, and then I passed him on that. But that really zaps you. That's at mile 82. And then you have a descent. It's called the Sugarloaf descent. And then there's a pavement section, which is bigger than any climb in Farmington or any climb I had done up to that point, back home, with the exception of any of these Leadville climbs. So you climb up this pavement section, which on the way out you go down, and you're going 40 miles an hour
Loving
down
it.
this pavement section. But in the back of your mind, you're like, this is an out and back course. So on the way back,
This is going to
I'm going to have to climb back up this.
Oh, and I was going to add, you're also 90 miles in at this point.
Yeah, so the top of that is mile 92. And if it was a 100-mile race, you'd have 8 miles left. But it's a 105-mile race, so you really got 13 more miles.
And you've got to be just...
You're after the pavement. So I actually get both the last 2 years, I've gotten a second wind at the top of that pavement.
Interesting.
For some reason. There's a little aid station, and it's a neutral aid station, so you can't have your crew there, but they hand out Cokes. And I put Cokes in my water bottle,
Yep.
and then I get back on my bike and drink the Cokes, and I think that Coke is the magic trick at mile 92 or whatever.
It's got to be, because especially to know that the cutoff is, like, you knew that it was tight, at least it sounds like at mile 92-ish.
I knew it was tight at mile 82. I was like, I have a chance of, finishing this thing. So I didn't stop. Like it's easy when you're hiking a bike up the hill to just stop and, take your time. But, 1 mile an hour is better than 0 miles an hour.
Right.
So I just kept
moving is better than not moving.
Yep.
But I want to get into your mind a little bit there, because you've got to be. What's motivating at that point? Is it the buckle? Is it that I need to finish? Is it that I don't want to have to do this again? Is it pride?
The buckle, I think having your family there to support you is a big thing, because they came all the way out here for you. So you don't want to let your family down. When you go back to work and your coworkers are asking you, oh, well, how'd it go? You don't want to say, oh, well, I didn't finish again. So there's all sorts of things.
You've got your marketing guy texting you buckle or bust.
Yeah. And then you got your marketing guy. You've got your coach that are all like, okay, well, you don't want to. Not that it would let them down. They'd be proud of you anyways.
But is that stuff consciously going through your mind, or are you just feeling like I've got a lot of people counting on me and I gotta drive? I gotta push.
I think it's more just people counting on you. You not wanting to let yourself down too. The founder of the race, his name's Ken Klober, and he gives the best motivational speech the day before the race. There's some YouTube videos out there, so if you YouTube Ken Klober, if you need some motivation, it was actually so motivational. We have these little signs that we put quotes on that are inside the showroom at the dealership, and I put one of his quotes on one of those signs, and it says, you can do more than you think you can, and you're better than you think you are. So you kind of you hear him talking to you, and he always says, dig deep, don't quit. So you hear him talking to you throughout the race.
Yeah.
So he's a big motivator. I think he gets a lot of people over the finish line on that race.
That is a great quote. You can do more than you think you can, and you're better than you think you are. Yeah. And I think that's what's so cool about the endurance sports, is it gives you a chance to test that theory in a physical outlet. And then at least for me, I then get to come back and I've got a little more, I don't know what you'd call it, stamina for life. Like I can handle, like, this isn't as painful as, as painful as I was a couple weeks ago.
Last weekend, I was in the most pain I've ever been.
And so all of a sudden this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
But I also think it's such a true statement that you're capable of so much more than you think you are, and you're better than you think you are. And I think it's awesome when there's those situations that kind of force you to figure out what you're made of. Walking your bike 82 miles into a race and knowing that you can't stop. Because, and that's where I think hopefully people can recognize how thin the margin is here. You're literally one stop away from not finishing.
Yeah.
Like literally one extra break and there's no buckle.
Yeah, I'm 5 minutes away.
I think that's so, and I relate to it. So when I ran my full marathon at the beginning of September, and I made some mistakes there as it relates to my ultra, which is a whole nother conversation. But part of it's because I pushed. But I was doing you probably when you're biking, you do a similar thing. You kind of are doing math in your head of what mile you're at, how much further what's it going to look like. And my first marathon I ever ran, I ran in 5 hours. And the next two I ran in like 4:30. Like mile 6 or 7 into this one, I realized if I maintained that pace, I could be sub 4 hours. But that's freaking really hard to do, to maintain that pace for the next, 22.2 miles or whatever. But it was a fun experience for me because I did maintain the pace, and I almost got in like this weird mental mindset of like, and actually my 26th mile was my fastest mile of the day because it was just like, I'm going to hit that goal. And I finished in 3:54.
Nice.
So similar, the little window, but I just think it's cool to hear, but that's, it's at a whole different scale than figuring that out from mile 6 to 26 is very different than 82 to 105.
Right. Well, and you're at altitude and you're trying to do biker's math when your head's kind of foggy, so it gets pretty interesting. But I think there's been some studies done on endurance athletes and just kind of how powerful the brain is. But I guess there is a huge amount of people that finish marathons right under 4 hours, because I think 4 hours is that's the time for marathon runners. Is that right?
Probably.
Like a lot of people have that goal. Leadville's the same way. There's the 9 hour and the 12 hour. The 9 hour gets you the big belt buckle, but people have that number in their mind, and there's a bunch of people that finish right under 9, and a bunch of people that finish right under 12.
Because it's like it's almost like it's just enough how hard to push.
Yeah.
Like it's like the dangling carrot, in front of you. Because if it weren't for that, it'd be pretty easy to finish in 12:30.
Right.
You could have taken a 20-minute break.
And I probably would have if there wasn't a
if that was
belt
allowed
buckle waiting for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. And to finish with 5 minutes to spare. And then so we finish year 2, which helped me understand too the difference, because I know year 1 there was the we didn't make the cutoff. Do you have any idea of what the speed difference was, what the gap change is from year 1 to 2, or what it would have been? Because what I'm curious about is what the Mike Ziems improvement was year over year.
It's a good question. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I was faster.
Yeah, just fast enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would imagine the experience year 2 is significantly different than year 1, because you get the buckle, family's around, it's celebratory. Are you instantly filled with the bucket of dopamine and looking at the next one, or are you like, I'm done, I'm never doing that again, that was the worst?
Yeah, my mindset right after the second time was, I'm done, I don't need to do this again.
Yeah, once was plenty.
So back to my buddy Matt. So the second year, his story is actually more interesting than my story. He finishes in 12:02 the second year. So 2 minutes away from getting a belt buckle. I finished 11:55. So I was kind of like, yeah, I'm done. But he wanted to get a belt buckle. So that's. And
you've got to be there with him.
I'm like, hey, you know what? We'll try it again the third time. And then now that I have my second belt buckle, the 1,000-mile belt buckle kind of sounds intriguing. But we'll see.
Because we're already 20% of the way there.
Yeah, just 8 more to go.
Yeah. What's been the biggest difference? Because year 3 was faster than year 2, right? What was the finish in year 3?
Year 3, I think I was 12 minutes faster than year 2, so 11 or maybe 7 minutes. 11:47, I think, was the time. So not tremendously faster, but I was kind of experimenting with training the third year. I was like, hey, can I finish without training as much as I did? Because the second year I was riding 15-hour weeks consistently, and that's a lot of bike riding. So the third year I was probably averaging more like 10 hours a week. So I wanted to see, okay, can I finish with training less? And
you still got faster.
I got faster, and the interesting thing is it wasn't any easier. It was just as hard. And I try to explain how hard this race is to people that haven't done it, but it's until you do it and you experience it, you don't realize how hard that thing is.
Try to explain it.
It's unexplainable. I'd have to take you up on one of those hills.
Because of and I totally get it. That's why I'm trying to pull from you trying to explain it. Do you think that it's the combination of, well, it's definitely got to be the combination of so many things: the distance, the elevation gain, the elevation, to begin with, the elements, I mean, it's just.
I think maybe the guys that go out there and hike 14ers might have an idea, because you get out there and you realize how big those mountains actually are, and it's just you just feel so small, and your body hurts. There's people that are crying on the side of the trail, because it hurts so bad. So, I guess,
literally try. And I'm actually curious. And we talked about it early on, but when running has that impact, and the best way I can explain when you're in the real deep pain running is it's kind of like shoots of lightning pain that sort of, and it is incredibly painful, and it's through your entire body. And like when I was doing my ultra, I was feeling that even when I was walking, like even a walking step would just jolt these. Incredible. But then it was weird. You talk about your second wind. I hit a second wind right at mile 60, and I ran for 5 miles, which was unheard of at the moment. I was limping around and hit that second wind. But the lightning is how I would describe kind of the deep pain from running. Try to describe it for me. The physical and the mental state that it puts you in.
I think so. Physically, it's just so uncomfortable. And if you're not used to being uncomfortable, then it's hard to deal with mentally. But everything in your mind is telling you should quit, because wouldn't it be nice? I want to go sit on the couch and drink a beer, but you're stuck out here riding a bike. So to overcome the voice in your head that's telling you to quit, it's kind of hard to overcome those demons, and there's a lot of darkness that comes with that. Like people end up being in a really dark place, but it's the uncomfortableness and doing something that's probably it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. But sticking with that when the voice is telling you to quit is the hard part.
Why do you think that's so? Because it's such a powerful experience too, like overriding that overwhelming, urge to quit, to give into the mind. I'm curious from, your thoughts, especially because something keeps pulling you back. You keep doing it again and again and again.
You don't have to be smart to ride bikes.
Just dumb enough to keep showing up. But there's got to be. Do you feel like it's it's shaping you for other components of your life, or that you're feeling fulfilled that you overcame?
I think it does. It does make you better in your life, and the other aspects of your life, because I think you were saying earlier, when your day gets hard, it's doing these hard things makes it easier to push through when it gets hard, because it's nowhere near as hard as what you just accomplished doing that race. Everyday life, we all have challenges, but it makes kind of overcoming those easier.
Feels more doable.
Yeah.
It's like the quote, you're capable of more than you think.
It changes the meter. So if your meter of dealing with uncomfortable situations is X amount high, it gives you a lot taller ceiling for that sort of stuff.
How come once isn't enough though then?
Good question. It kind of gets addicting. And I think we were talking about this earlier. You're kind of an all or nothing guy, and I think I'm the same way. And it's nice being in shape. It keeps you in shape. It gives you something to shoot for. I think if I didn't have that goal kind of out in the distance, that I wouldn't train. I wouldn't be in shape. I'm not that in shape compared to some people, but I'm in shape enough to finish that race. And having that goal and that target out there just keeps you going.
Yeah. So year 3 now, we finished we've improved our time again, which at least you're in double digits, which I don't know why, but feels like a safer margin, like 11:47 feels way faster than
13 minutes is way longer than 5 minutes.
I don't know why, but
still a lot can go wrong in 13 minutes.
It's like that. Yeah. But then I assume that we're already prepping for the next one, or looking ahead at what's next and what is next. What's kind of what's on the horizon on that end?
I don't know yet. That's to be determined. I'm sure Leadville's probably in the future.
Do you think you're going to do Leadville every year now?
I'd like to. I'd like to get the 1,000-mile buckle. Would be the next goal. But I'm still dealing with the lottery and trying to get in. So I've kind of told myself if I don't get in through the lottery, then I'll just try again next year.
I doubt it.
We'll see.
I would bet my next paycheck
That I'll be in the race.
that you'll do
I'll find a way.
the charity thing,
Or I'll do the camp, or I'll do something.
something else. Yeah, because and that's what I think it's interesting because I've had so many of these conversations with I call it endurance athletes, or and I think it changes too, especially in the ultra endurance world, these 100-mile races that we're talking about. But there really is something that gets in you, and people don't have the capacity to not do it anymore.
I think it's interesting, and I think for the endurance athletes, I think they definitely want to try to push the limits and trying to reach the limit. And then once you've reached your limit, then, like I said, the ceiling gets taller. So your limit isn't what it used to be.
You didn't even reach your limit.
Right. So what is my limit? And both years that I finished, I felt like I could probably have gone faster both years. So trying to push that and go faster without totally blowing up and cratering halfway through the race, that's kind of something that's interesting to play around with.
Yeah. And then it's interesting to think about, like, you talk about, and actually I told you about, I had Doug Miller on, and we were talking about the benefits of being outside of your comfort zone, which in any endurance event like this, you're out of your comfort zone most of the time, which is also kind of interesting because humans most of the time have been out of their comfort zone, until recently, when we have all these comforts that, modern humans get. But I think there's almost something like natural about it. But anyway, what he was talking about was what you'll find is that you get out of your comfort zone, and then that becomes the new comfort zone. And then you have to find a way to push the barrier again. And it applies to all sorts of components of life, obviously. But in the context of sports or endurance sports, then that next ring, I think, can look different in a few ways. You could try to be faster, like be more uncomfortable for the same distance and finish quicker, or how much further could you go?
Yeah, I think there's those two aspects that are intriguing to me. I think what keeps me coming back, though, is I just kind of like riding my bike. So my outlook,
simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tell myself on race days. Like, all you got to do is go out there and ride your bike. You like riding your bike. Just go out there and do that. And that makes it easier just to get out there, and it's just a bike ride.
I'm curious about that because there's definitely more. I think it's a great way to frame it day of, to have fun. There's definitely more to showing up than.
Yeah, I wouldn't just show up without training and, it's just a bike ride. I mean, there's months of preparation and going into that.
Which I think is important for people to understand too, that riding 100 miles is one thing. Training to successfully ride 100 miles is a whole nother thing. And that's, I think, part of why I'm really liking, this endurance world, is because there's so many parallels and so many little lessons along the way. The day of event is usually what gets talked about the most, pushing through the pain and finishing in time and getting the buckle and things like that. But it's like the iceberg. What people don't see is all the other great parallels that have to happen along the way with dedication and consistency and, hard work. I mean, it's training for an ultra event in itself is, a whole undertaking anyway.
Yeah, you can get burnt out real fast trying to train for an endurance event like Leadville.
So maybe
running or cycling.
And maybe that's where the I like riding my bike mindset helps. Because, try to keep the training the training side of it fun too, and then obviously staying fit and healthy.
I think if you're going to do something for a prolonged period of time, anything, I think it has to be fun to some degree. It's not going to be fun all the time, but.
So when you're at mile 82 and you're dying, are you having fun?
I start having fun again at once I drink the Coke at mile 92, and then there's this really fun little downhill section that I get to go really fast on. I have fun right there.
When you're going downhill like that, is it actually a break, or because we talked about those contact points?
It's not really, because especially depending on the terrain, if it's bumpy, you're using your legs as shock absorbers. So your quads, you have an opportunity for your quads to cramp up again.
Yeah.
On those downhill, you're basically doing an extended squat for however long you're going downhill for.
Yeah, it's just working it in a different way, and still prolonged. Yeah.
So like the first year, my first cramp was going downhill after there's this uphill climb, and then you go down the steep downhill part, and that's when I started to cramp, was on the downhill part. So
it's interesting, and if you don't mind humoring me, because full disclosure, I kind of assumed that the downhill with a bike is like a break. Like I've sort of been like, well, they get to go downhill on the mountain bike. It's kind of I think that that's interesting education for me about the quads and the realities of downhill. Do you mind? I'd love it just for people to fully wrap their heads around how big of an ordeal Leadville 100 is. Can you kind of walk us through the course? I mean,
Yeah.
Not every little thing, but I think paint the picture of the magnitude of what this is, and just kind of help paint the picture of what the Leadville 100 looks like.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. So it's an out and back course, 105 miles. It starts in downtown Leadville, which is a population of about, I think, maybe 2,000 people. Starts on Harrison and 6th Street. It goes down outside of town, and then it gets on this dirt part they call it St. Kevin's, and it's a climb. And that's the first climb. That's kind of the part. The first two climbs warm you up or soften you up for the rest of the day. So there's those first two climbs. You make it up St. Kevin's, and then you have the downhill section that's on the pavement, and that's the really fast section that you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking about, okay, well, this is fun, but we're going to have to ride back up this on the way back. You get down to the bottom of that, and then you climb up this other section called Hagerman's, which is a gradual uphill that is like rutted out to death. So it's like jarring, like the whole time you're riding up it. You get up that, and then there's another climb called Sugarloaf. And so at that point, so you've gone from 9,300 feet, 10,300 feet is Leadville. At that point, you've probably climbed about 3,000 or 4,000 feet.
Wow.
At that point.
And that's how many miles in?
That would be, you are about 20 miles into the race. Then you go down the power line climb, and that's when that's where the downhill is not, you're not taking a break down that because it is steep. It's the 20% grade uphill that I was talking about, people walking their bikes up, you're riding down that.
Yeah.
And it's this section that's got these power lines going down it. So it's like a power line service road on this steep mountain. And all of the water that Leadville gets in the summer kind of drains down this mountain, and it creates all these grooves and ruts, and it's kind of loose and rocky in parts. And it's a lot of people that hear about Leadville say it's kind of like a road race. So where it's not very technical, but that's the most technical part of the race, and it's not easy. A lot of people wreck This last year, I rode by a guy that had wrecked, and he was getting tended to by medics. So it's
Like a real wreck.
Yeah, it was a real. He hit his head pretty hard. So you get down that, and then there is about, I'd say, 15 miles of just flat or false flat. Like there's not really anything that
feels flat compared to that.
Feels flat.
Yeah.
But then you have good opportunities for headwinds and things like that. So there's about 15 miles of that. And then you get to the Twin Lakes Dam aid station, which is really fun. It's kind of like a big party. There's everybody's aid or crew is set up on the sides of the road, and they're ringing their cowbells. So that kind of pumps you up and gets you through that section. And then you get to the Columbine climb. And the Columbine climb starts at 90, this says 9265, and it goes all the way up to 12,480 feet.
Wow.
So you get to the top of that, and then you turn around, and you do it all over again.
Jeez.
But just in reverse.
The ups and downs, I think, are, because you talk about elevation again, and I think, you kind of have a tendency of thinking it's up and then down.
Right.
In between, there's
ups and downs. They're just shorter ups and downs in between. But I think if you can, putting the profile of this course on this, just so the viewers can kind of get an idea of what
visually see it,
what the course looks like, because and seeing that though isn't like seeing it in person.
Right.
Like I said, trying to explain it to people that haven't done it, I don't think they get it.
You just gotta, unless you've done it, it's a whole nother level. And I think that's why I've been so pumped up to chat with you about it, because I have a new appreciation now for, like, I've always ran marathons, and I've always, I think, recognized how big it was. But after my attempt at an ultra, I have a whole new appreciation for what's really involved in it and how much is there. So, we've talked about, year 3 and things like that, and then those goals. Besides Leadville, are there anything's kind of hanging out on the horizon for goals? Because I see you're still kind of crushing the training, at least on on Strava.
And I can't really wrap my head around this, but the Tour Divide is kind of got my attention. But I've never bike packed. I've actually never really camped all that much either. So I think there's a pretty big learning curve to combine biking and camping. So that scares me. But that, and plus the time thing.
Yeah.
You have the amount of training you'd have to do leading up to it, and then to be unavailable for a whole month or however long it takes.
What an experience, though. I mean, you'd get to imagine the things you'd see.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, that would be, here's a question actually it makes me think. I was going to say that would be a life-changing experience, but do you feel like Leadville, is that a fair statement to say that it's life-changing? It's that big?
Yeah, I think so. I think like more and more people I talk to, they're talking about, oh yeah, I'm going to try to do Leadville this year. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't even really tell them that I do it, but I'm like, yeah, you should do it.
Almost because there's this, like, I don't know, stoicism of, I know what's about to.
Yeah.
I know how big that is.
I just kind of want to watch their journey. If they find out that I've done it and they want to, ask me some questions, I'm happy to help there. But, and I'm by no means, the Leadville guru, but 2 out of 3, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah.
I can point people in the right direction on what they should focus on.
Starting to get it figured out at least a little bit. Plus, we're on our way to the 1,000-mile buckle.
Well, then I might be able to say I'm an expert when I've done it.
Isn't there a measurement for expertise? They measure in hours. I forget what it is, but 1,000 hours or something.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah. So
1,000 miles.
About 1,000 miles.
I mean, if you add up all of the hours of bike training, so let's say you ride your bike 10 hours a week for 52 weeks, you're
an expert.
You're adding up, pretty quick there.
An expert in pain, at least.
Yeah.
That's why I was interested early on when you alluded that you didn't identify as a biker. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Somebody that rides all the time, has ridden for decades, finished Leadville 100 twice. I mean, that's as biker as it gets.
I guess you're right. Yeah, maybe I need to change my pronouns.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Mike.
I'm a biker.
I identify as a biker. He, she. Mike, thanks so much for entertaining me and for letting us peek behind the curtain a little bit on everything that's involved in Leadville 100. I really appreciate it. And it's also just to share before we wrap, but I'm genuinely super grateful to know you. It's been really cool to see. Because I've kind of gotten to observe the Leadville 100 journey for a few years, and I've been sort of on my own endurance journey, in a different way, but at similar time. And so it's been really fun. But I also have really appreciated just your support and your confidence, and you've kind of helped me a ton way beyond just endurance. So I also want to take the opportunity to thank you for that, because it's huge. But I can't wait to see where you take it, because I feel like, well, it's like I said, if I was a betting man, there's a registration for next year. I think
there might be. I think I likewise to you, and I think you're probably the one to watch kind of on this journey here on your running and your endurance racing. You've been exciting to watch too. So,
well, it means a lot coming from you. I have a tradition here.
Okay,
an Inspire by Example shirt for you.
Perfect.
Because you are inspiring me.
Thank you very much.
By example, and I genuinely appreciate it.
Thank you. I thought you were going to break out the hot wings, and we're going to try some hot wings and ask me questions. Okay.
Yeah, that's next week. Next episode when we talk about business, I'll make you eat hot wings.
Let's incorporate the hot wings.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Okay. Mike, thanks so much.
Again, this episode of Chasing Greatness is brought to you by Proud Source Water, sourced from the Rocky Mountains.
You heard it here first, folks. Enter promo code Chasing Greatness 20, Mike Ziems 20 for 20% off of your water. Awesome.